Okay, so in this one, I want to show you some of my Claude commands and how I use them to speed up my everyday workflows. So you can add your own custom commands to Claude Code. You can add them at the project level, or you can add them at the system level, which I've done. So you can have commands where you can create a git commit, which I've created, which speeds up your workflow massively because it can look at all the changes and name this thing far better and more descriptively than you ever could. I'll show you some of the code behind that. So we have our commit command here, and you can either place these inside the .claude commands folder inside your project, or like I've done, inside my user directory, so that I get these commands across all my projects and applications. So you'll see at the top, we have this section for allowed tools, and that basically gives these commands permission to run these tools without asking for permission from you or anything like that. So it's allowed to run git add, git status, and git commit. And you'll see in the context here, you'll see that it's been told to run git status, check git diff, look at the branch name, look at the recent commits, and then based on those, create a single commit. So I have previously used cursors built in commits where you can go here and there's a button where you can press to like let AI write your commits. But I've found those are way too verbose and don't really describe what's actually going on. So that's why I've implemented this inside of Claude Code. So I have told it to keep the first line short, concise, technical summary of the change, and then leave a blank line, and then to add detailed bullet points explaining further what we've actually done. And then also this part at the bottom for do not include any attribution, co-authorship, or mentions of Claude AI assistance, because if you don't, it'll put in at the bottom like generated by Claude Code, and I think that's not the most professional thing depending on what you're doing. So that's the commits. It's really good and handy. The next big time saver is for creating pull requests. I don't often do this on my own personal projects where I'm the only developer working. Quite often, if I'm making small changes, I'll just be working directly off main. But for client work or my consulting projects, it's essential. So I have this here that it can run various commands as well, and it uses the GitHub CLI to do the pull request creation. The GitHub CLI is super powerful and great, especially when you're using these AI tools, because it allows them to interact with GitHub in a much more fine-grained way. So the next major thing we do here is take in arguments, and that allows you to type in additional information at the end of the prompt to give it some more guidance. So you could leave some additional context in here if you want. And then it basically tells Claude to create a GitHub pull request, and basically tells it, what I like to do is put square brackets at the start that kind of say if it was payments or accounting or whatever kind of module I'm working in. So it just gets it to write these pull request titles and descriptions more how I would actually write them. And that way saves me huge amounts of time. The next two commands are pretty major for workflow. So we have write-prd, which we obviously do a lot now as developers because AI can do a lot of the coding work, a lot of the heavy lifting for us if we write really well descriptive task lists and PRDs. Our goal here is essentially to keep Claude Code focused, because if you give it too big a context, it starts off quite well, and then by the end of the feature, it's starting to get confused on some things, or hallucinating a little bit, or just going around in circles. And that's essentially the thing we want to avoid with these AI tools. So what we want instead is to create a really well thought out PRD and then break that down into subtasks. So I have to say I borrowed most of this and the create-tasks-from-prd from Ryan Carson. He open sourced these AI dev tasks. They were initially made for Cursor to do a similar thing, help write a PRD, break it down into tasks and let Cursor iterate on it. But they work with all kinds of things that work with Claude Code, Windsurf, and more as well. I've taken his as a starting point, tweaked them a little bit more for my specific workflows and Claude Code specifically. I'll show you how this works now. So if we go to our terminal and we can paste this in, so we'll have write-prd, and this is for Rapid Ruby. It's not really something I want to do, but it's just a good example of a complex task. So currently we're using my other payment links product, Pay Here, to process the payments for courses, for memberships, subscriptions on Rapid Ruby. And we're just saying here that we want to rip out Pay Here and put Stripe checkout in directly. So we can have it write this PRD, which I'll run now. And then this is going to come back with some questions. So it has business context, A, B, and C, and kind of gives us multiple choice as well. So it keeps the question answering process very simple for us too. And then it has technical scope where we can see it's asking us about the technical approaches as well. So I'll go and fill those in and we'll come back when this is generated.
A few moments later.
And you can see now we've got our PRD created and it's very thorough. So it comes and describes Stripe checkout integration, replace Pay Here payment processing with direct Stripe. And it has business goals, user stories, functional requirements, user interface, data requirements, and it's actually going down and breaking into the types of models that we need, what we need to interact with. It knows because it's scanned our code base and has looked at user course plan and knows about all these things. So it's writing the PRD with our full code base in context. It's also coming in and saying technical implementation notes where it's actually telling us what sort of controllers we might need, what sort of service objects we need as well, and even breaking down the front end approach and what stimulus controllers we need, and even third-party integrations. So like what Stripe webhooks we might need to listen out for and things like that. It's also then saying like what's out of scope, success metrics, and then it begins to start task breakdown of various things that it can do. So all in all, this really goes in depth for a PRD. It's not the sort of level I would go to myself very often. It would probably take me hours of work to go into this much detail, research the code base, think up the controller names and architect it all. And it's just a huge game changer in terms of saving time and also helping these AIs give us way better output. So let's take a look at the next task then. And the next one is create tasks from PRD. And we'll go ahead and run that. And this has come back. And the way this works is it starts out by listing the high level tasks. So the major 1.0, 2.0, and then asks you based on the high level tasks, are you ready to generate detailed subtasks? Respond with go to proceed. So if we respond with go, that's going to go through then and create all of the detailed subtasks for us as well. Now we can come in here and look at this, and we've got tasks for Stripe checkout integration. It lists out relevant files at the start. So it's listing out all kinds of models, controllers, views, background jobs, everything like that. And then comes in here and starts to break down these. So you'll see we have the same 1.0 tasks, Stripe setup and database migration. And then we have 1.1, which is just add the Stripe gem and add the Stripe credentials and so on. So it really breaks these down into real fine-grained tasks that keeps Claude Code super focused and means that at any time we can quit out of the Claude Code session, start up a new fresh one, and just tell it continue where you left off, because it's going to come through here and put an X in each of these when they're done, like so. And it then knows the progress of where it's at. It can go back and reference the full PRD. So you can think of this process as essentially offloading all of the context into a couple of files on the file system. And then at any point, we can use Claude Code. We can switch to Cursor if we want. We can use any AI, load in the same context, and it'll just keep focused and continue on where it left off. So this is probably the most powerful workflow tool for Claude Code right now, or any AI, and just really helps with those bigger, meatier features that you can build. And if you're not using a process like this, then you rely on working with Claude Code, building up the context, telling it what you like, what you don't. And eventually, if that session crashes or starts to hallucinate and you need to close it, you're in a position where all the context is in the AI model instead of sitting on your machine that you can freshly reload it back in. So this I've found to be incredibly powerful for those really big chunky tasks, and it's probably the best way to work right now for complex AI sessions. So that's my 4 biggest time-saving Claude Code commands right now. If you have more, please drop them in the comments and let me know how you're working with Claude Code or Cursor or any of these other AIs, because it's super interesting right now and things are changing so fast that it's kind of hard to keep up. And if you're interested in AI tooling, Claude Code, Cursor, things like that, check out this video or consider subscribing to the channel for more. Thanks.